All right, let's go ahead and start with chapter 3. And you should have chapter 3, and then the title should be Man. Okay? As we have discussed, man is the creature created for the purpose of cleaving to God. Only man is placed between perfection and deficiency with the power to earn perfection. Man must earn this perfection, however, through his own free will and desire. If he were compelled towards perfection, then he would not really be the master of it. Rather, who he who compelled him would be the one responsible, and God's purpose would not be fulfilled. It was therefore necessary that man be given free will and be balanced between good and evil and not be compelled towards either. He has the power of choice and is able to choose either side knowingly and willingly and possess whichever one he wishes. Man was therefore created with both a good urge, a yetzer hatov, and a evil urge, a yetzer harah. He has the power to incline himself to whatever direction he desires. Pretty interesting, huh? The first sentence, I think that, or is it the second sentence? Only man is placed between perfection and deficiency with the power to earn perfection. You know, we think of all the created things, and even the animals that God created. What's the difference between, and of course it's, I don't know if this question is right, but what's the difference between just another created, say, an animal and ourselves? I think Rod posted this question the other day. Intelligent speech, right? But an animal is not required. It doesn't have, these two choices that we have to make, this yetzer harah and the yetzer tov. That he's basically reigned with what instinct, with the five senses. When what separates us is the higher soul of an animal, from an animal. So when an animal eats, what does he do? He automatically just devours stuff. I know I feed the dogs at about 5:30, and that's all they do. But what do we do before we eat? Before Shabbat? So we have a consciousness that knows that there's a higher being. So that's what separates us. So when we can say that that's what separates us, but us that know, does every human being, before they eat, do they say grace? Do they bless their foods? Do they say the barakah? No, right? Right. They do. They have the ability and the consciousness to get to that level, but when we're ruled with the five senses, just like an animal, then we kind of put Hashem over to the side, and when we do that, we're basically going with our animal instinct, our five senses, our physical body, and not giving any consideration to that, which is, right, the higher self, the soul. So any questions? I'm going to read a little bit here on some of the commentary. To reiterate, we alone among all beings are able to draw close to God and to attach onto His presence. And we're indeed able to achieve this sort of moral and spiritual perfection that will allow for that, as well the imperfection that would disallow that. But if we're to achieve that sort of perfection, we need to strive for it by our own volition and free choice. Because if we were to somehow come upon perfection by happenstance, by dint of inborn characteristics, or by legacy, then we shouldn't or wouldn't have chosen to achieve it freely as we must do. That is why humankind was originally placed in a situation in which each person could freely choose between perfection and imperfection and could achieve either, and why each was born with both the yetzer harah and the yetzer hatov, either of which we could choose to favor. So, when we talk about free will, that's, I know in studying Torah, we know that we do have free will. But then if you start looking, if you start thinking I mean, can I have free will? Can I, I guess in the civil context, can I go out and just do whatever I want? I mean, there's laws, there's certain things that in the civil, kind of puts, you can't go out there and, I don't know, get on, takes, drive on the wrong side of the road, right? There's consequences. I mean, there's certain things the consequences that keep us in line. But when we're talking about the higher self, the higher, do we have free will? What does that mean? How do you know that, at the higher self, we have free will? You know, when it's to the physical, it's more of a civil, which doesn't matter. But what matters is when it's to the higher self. So when somebody comes up to you and insults you, what decision, what do we do? Do we have a choice of what? Reacting with anger, or what? Or being, acting with humility? That's choosing over the yetzer harah or the yetzer tov. What do we take when we leave this world? Do we take, our actions here? I mean, do we take, hey, I choose the blue house rather than the old house. That's, the blue house rather than the red house. No, we take a lot of these, these mitzvahs, these, we take all these choices, the correct choices. So, there's a lot of times we don't even we don't even take the time to think about the choices that we're making, whether we're making a good choice or a bad choice. But it just comes as an emotion. What's that?
No, I was just going to say how earlier we were having a discussion with Tom and how he was saying that he is the benefactor of some of his grandfather's choices to do mitzvahs and to give tithes. And we don't know when we're doing those acts, we just don't know how far those acts Hashem is going to take them, how many generations going back or going forward.
Right.
And it's, in thinking about it, we do these things, like Tom said, we thinking that maybe this is going to better our lives, when in actuality we're bettering our children and our grandchildren's lives by taking the time to give and to study and to share.
Right. We have an influence over the people around us, whether we like it or not. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a spouse that doesn't believe like we do, you ask a rabbi, what do I do with the spouse that doesn't think like I do? Just leave them alone, because right, and and in the and in the you and what happens is that that thought travels. It's already proven in the lab about about speech and I talked to Richard. He calls me once in a while, and I'll tell him, or he'll tell me, hey, you got my message. And it's true. How many times have you been thinking of somebody or thinking of something, and boom, it happens. So, there was, and I'm kind of getting sidetracked, but there was a study done by some Japanese people. They went to an island, and there was a whole bunch of monkeys there. And those of you guys that listen to some of the stuff, they already heard this, but just bear with me. So what they were doing is they were teaching that they went to an isolated island with a whole bunch of monkeys. So the scientists were grabbing a banana and they were giving it to the monkeys, but before they would give it to them, they would drop it in the sand, and the monkeys loved the bananas, but they hated the sand, and because it was awful. So one day I know that they did it for a few days, and then one day one of the young I guess they were chimpanzees, grabbed the banana when it was dropped on in the sand, and he went to the water and washed it. So all the other monkeys started looking at him, and they did it too. They started, they figured out a way to do it. Then, so there was another island that they hadn't done that experiment, but as soon as they went to that island and they dropped the bananas, the monkeys already knew how to do it. So the experiments have showed that that the mere thought that thoughts actually travel. Another example is that there was a rabbi that was trying to figure out this mystery of that was in the Torah that he couldn't figure out. It took him 15 years to figure out this. One day he just out of the blue he said, "Oh, I got it," So he went to one of his students and he told his students, "I've been contemplating about this, this Torah question or this Torah issue that I had, and here it is." Oh no, well he said, and here it is. And before he could get it out, the student goes, "Yeah, it's this, this, and this." And he was like, "Wait a minute, it took me 15 years to think of that." So, and the student just came out of the blue. And his other rabbis say the mere fact that he figured it out traveled, and it went into his students. So so we think of those, our children, our kids, our husbands, our wives, that this, just keep doing what you're doing, and it travels. I know Matthew and Stephen, a lot of times we don't think they're listening, or we don't think they're doing things, but then they'll come, it'll be Friday night and we're doing Shabbat and he has to work, and out of the blue he says Shabbat Shalom, and I'm like, man, he remembered. So definitely.
And another thing that while we were talking, I was thinking that anything that is given to you and it doesn't cost you anything, we really don't take care of. And I'm talking about when I was younger and somebody gave me something, a car, whatever. We don't take care of it as much as when we have to pay the price for that item.
Right.
And I believe that it's our mitzvahs, it's our Torah study, it's our commitment to each other and to Hashem that helps elevate us to merit some of the things that He brings across our path. And that's a choice in itself.
Right. Yeah, definitely. It is a choice, and I think I was trying to look ahead, or was it in the last chapter that we talked about how it may have been the last chapter that we talked about it's got to be earned. Was it the last chapter, or is it I'm looking at chapter ahead? Or
I think it was Sarah that always used to call bread of shame.
Well, yeah, but
It has to cost you something.
right, but yeah, but it is, yeah, definitely it does. We talk about what merit. Those of you guys. I mean, I'm not sure what a lot of you guys have done and what education level it is, but imagine. I know I throw this out once in a while. Going to a doctor that was given their medical, license. And not only that, but I mean, what merit would it have if somebody gave you a certificate? It's like, we, there is, no merit in that. But I think it's the previous chapter, the purpose of creation. I think it was, where it talks about that. If you guys want to look at it later, or maybe the next one. But anyway, we'll move on to any questions or anything on that.
I have a question.
Sure.
I really been wanting to ask for a while.
Yeah.
And it came up, and I don't know if it's because I heard Rod talking about it, or if I was reading it when I was about the Mount Holly when we first
Mhm.
started the book. Anyway, it was talking about how he was, was in the, and he heard and that Moses spoke to him and everything.
Mhm.
But and I was like, I thought that you weren't supposed to speak. Of course, I realized that nobody knows where Moses was buried, but I thought you weren't ever supposed to speak to the dead. But yet, there's different places about these.
Right.
That do that. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you reconcile?
Yeah, it's pretty it's pretty interesting because we talk about the Ramchal, and we talk about other Tzaddiks, and we talk about. Have you heard of it, the Lulas? And what it is, it's you commemorate the death of a Zadik, and you know, by talking good about them, you do this stuff because they're up there fighting for us, you know, and whatever. Uh, so, and have you heard the term that a righteous person can do more through his death than, you know, than being here? So we talk about, you know, Shimon Bar Yochai. I try to do the lulas whenever the rabbi that we when he comes online, but so there's an energy out there to it that comes down when they're whether it's, you know, the ability to understand things more. But to answer your question a little, I guess, or the question is that um, the Ramchal was visited by Moses, by Elianavi, by an archangel, Father Abraham our father. And the question is that if we're prohibited from talking to the dead, macromancy. So to answer you this, in Kabbalah, the Kabbalistic view of the soul, there is no time. So time is specific to the physical. So in the realm of the spiritual, there is no time. So everything is happening at the same time. So right, everything's happening at the same time. So when Moses appeared to the Ramchal, it may have been at the same time that he was, you know, on Mount Sinai. So if everything's happening at the same time, then you talk about, and here's where science has proved that you could be more than one places at the same time. It sounds like science fiction, but science has proved it. So if Moses was speaking to Shimon Bar Yochai, or the Ramchal, it wasn't that he was dead or he was in a place where he could be able to do that, could do this traveling type of. Well, right. So both of them can meet in this meeting place where it's not this physical. Because if you read what the Ramchal says, and you hear other prophets and other men of God, that they go into this trance and they're in a sleep-like state. And actually, I got some expert some
Like an
elevated consciousness. Abraham Abulafia. Have you guys heard who Abraham Abulafia is? He's the Ari. He's one of the main teachers of the Ari, or what the Ari studied. So we talk about meditation and the Yichudims, the Hebrew letters, and the visualization of Hebrew letters, meditation that puts you in this type of trance. So in other words, they weren't dead. They were just meeting at a different level in a meeting place, I guess. Long story short. So so you have the celestial, they call them the celestial learning centers, or celestial schools that even the Zohar talks about, that when Moses went for 40 days and 40 nights up on Mount Sinai, that he literally, and they said he didn't eat, he didn't drink for 40 days and 40 nights. A normal person would, I mean, can you eat, not eat, and drink for 40 days and 40 nights? So he ascended. He is supposed, according to the Zohar, he ascended to another place. It wasn't up in the mountain. The mountain represents an elevated place. So he ascended for 40 days and 40 nights. And so, you know, it talks about that he went to celestial, you know, schools and other things. But he went to another realm, another place where he, you know, he visited Shimon Bar Yochai, the Ramchal.
It wasn't necessarily like a physical thing.
Right.
It was a spiritual thing.
Right.
So to differentiate between that
Uh-huh.
and
Right, right.
How would you explain the prohibition against talking to them?
Yeah.
You would use a medium?
Yeah, there's mediums that call, that are used to call, the dead. I know Saul used a medium, and he was punished for that. I mean, there's prohibitions, and there's a reason for that. What's that?
Seriously,
Right. So he was seriously punished for that.
and his children.
Right. So when we're doing that, if the Torah tells us, there's a reason why. And when you're using a medium doesn't know anything about Torah. A medium doesn't understand the laws of the spiritual world. They're dealing with a mysticism that is dark. So what they may be conjuring up is not anything good. So you talk about dark forces. That may be it. So that's So
And the realm touches on those further on in the book.
Right.
And getting into those
Right.
other.
Right. Yeah. And he has a great section on I forget what it's called, the spiritual world, and he talks about there's a time when dark forces are released, and a time when they got to come back in. You know how Dracula had to be in before dark. Yeah. And there is some substance to that. So yeah, the macromancy, we're strictly prohibited from doing that, but and that's because number one, the Torah.
Focusing on something else besides
Hashem, right.
You're summoning, you wanting and desiring someone else to speak to you other than Hashem.
Right.
And the attention of Hashem. And so it's idolatry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, on the big scale. Right, good point.
Because
Now.
you're wanting for self, not for Hashem.
Right.
Every good thing, every pure, holy thing has an opposite,
Hmm.
has a bad,
Right.
unholy thing.
Right. Exactly.
Counterfeit.
Right.
So we need to seek the real.
Right. There is a counterfeit.
The counterfeit is often very attractive. And,
Right.
let's go this way.
Yeah. Let's go this way. But we have the Torah that gives us the path and knows that and a lot of times Saul was in desperate. I mean, he was desperate, to call Samuel, and to get answers or to. And a lot of times there's a lot of desperate people. I know there's a medium across the street here that has there's a sign out there, but people are desperate. They don't want to seek Hashem. They want an immediate answer like now. And that's their way of doing it. Well, they don't know any other way but that. We talk about our animal instincts or the connection with Hashem. What other way or what other way would you have if you didn't know the knowledge of Hashem, of God, to
Which ties back to the very beginning when we're talking about the difference between man and them.
Right,
So
exactly.
going to our yetzer tov or our yetzer harah. So it's always
That's the choice, exactly. The choice, always a choice, exactly. So
Yesterday, my daughter was telling me she was telling me about a temptation that she had. And a lot of times people feel so bad that they're tempted. I was like, no, you have to have temptation.
yeah, there is.
Temptation is a good thing. How would you choose the good? She chose not to get
Right.
into this temptation.
Right.
I said, how would you choose the good if there was no temptation?
Right.
You have to have temptation in order to be able to.
Right, and what society is teaching us, or it's teaching our children, or teaching those that are not based in Torah, is that you give in to those temptations. You look at some of these movie stars that started off as a man and now they're a woman. You look at hey, I was born this. I feel like I'm this way, but then so I'm just going to go with it. There is certain things are
Well, they have no guidelines. It's one of the feelings.
The feelings, right.
And urges.
and urges, exactly.
There's no guidelines.
Those that I talk to all the time, I always talk about brakes. A car without any brakes is very dangerous. So you got to know when to put the brakes, and so you can't.
Where the break is.
Right? They don't. Yeah, exactly. They don't know. Right. Yeah. So. So there is a break, and the break tells us that hey, we don't give in to our these temptations, because they're dangerous. Whether it's, wanting to be, something that Hashem didn't make you, or wanting some kind of desire that is forbidden. There's breaks there. Say, nope, I know that is my tikkun, and I don't give in to my tikkun. I fight it, and that elevates me. That makes me, that gives me that choice, that closeness to Hashem that I desire. But giving myself to the yetzer harah, separates me from Him, and that void that Hashem leaves when it separates, something has to fill it. So darkness comes in. What happens when you if you turn off these lights? There's a void there that darkness, comes. So there's this void that happens when we choose something that is not right.
It's not just darkness, but it's a different path. It's a little off the path maybe, and goes further and further
Right.
off the path with every subsequent
Right.
choice.
And then and it gets you further and further. And next thing you know, that little light that you see no more light. And a lot of us have been there. I remember years ago where I just couldn't see the light. There was so much darkness there from the choices that I've made, right? And when it's hard to speak to someone that is going through something like that, and to try to hey, let me talk to you about there's these choices and there's this thing called tikkun, and how do you explain that to them, to try to get them back? Even our children, sometimes it's hard for us for them to understand that. That's why it's so important to from the beginning, to start from when they're little. But when they're 20 years old and you're just kind of telling them, it's like, wait a minute. But we talk about teleportation, being at different places at the different times. Science has also proved that, and this comes with quantum physics, that you can literally change the past. So we talk about Torah and how we talk about how our, that we would have that we hoped that we would have known this 20 years ago. And I can see where, us doing it now literally goes back like our kids, though they may have not known this 20 years ago, but they are understanding at some level, and they are kind of gaining some of the ground.
They know it exists.
Right. We did. Right. So, but our grandchildren, we talk about this great joy of our grandchildren that come over on Shabbat and they love it. And there, we're starting from the ground, ground up.
You always remind us about Habadallah.
Yeah. Grandma, it's Habadallah. Can we do Habadallah? So, and then, right. So we start from there, and there is a restoration there. We think that, hey, we could change the past, but there is a mending of those things. Because how many, I know we have a lot of family. We have had just about everyone over for Shabbat that we would have never figured would accept an invitation 2 or 3 years ago. We have, Christian, ex-pastors that have come, my mother-in-law, father-in-law, that, and they love it, and they know what Shabbat is now. And they, well, we can't make it this Shabbat, but, we'll think about next Shabbat or whatever. But and they love it. They like it. They enjoy it. So slowly, we could see that there's something happening.
And by making those good choices.
The good choices, right.
We start to mend, like the carpet that Miss Betty talks about, that's beautiful on one side, but on the bottom it's got
Right.
knots and it's twisted, but it's beautiful. And that's what we're working on now. We're making the choices to tie those knots
Right.
together.
Right. Yeah. So, did you have a question? I remember. No. Okay. Right, Scott. Yeah. Yeah. So we and another thing is that to understand the Ramchal, you have to go back and he was a Kabbalist. He was, you know, there's a word that is kind of maybe frowned upon, mysticism. You know, when you say the word mysticism, you know, there's an understanding, a higher level of understanding of the Torah. You know, everything has a soul. Everything has a soul. You know, we have a Torah there. That's the physical body, just like we have. But then there's a soul that goes with that Torah there. So, so to neglect the soul of something is not good. You know, we talk about 60%, is it, of marriages end in divorce now? Because a lot of times, we just look at the physical. If we were to look at, you know, at what is the Jewish divorce rate is like 5%, I think it is. You know, we look at a lot of the Orthodox, right? So where, you know, the physical is the second thing, or probably one of the last things. You know, they look at, you know, the spiritual part. They look at the other, not just the physical, but we're so used to here in America to just look at the physical. Oh my God, I'm in love, you know, by appearance, or I'm not. But deep down inside, the soul is so dark and ugly that, you know. But we don't concentrate on that. We concentrate on the physical. So to get to the mystical part of the Torah, which is the soul of the Torah. So the Torah has a soul too, and it's all these layers that we talk about. That peeling back the layers of the Torah, it's like an onion. It goes deep into it. I was trying to make a point, but I I forgot.
The Torah has a soul?
Yeah, right. The mystical
Talk
part.
about the onion.
Yeah, the onion, right. But I was trying to make a point of that. So I think the point that I was trying to make, that there was also archangels that came to the Ramchal, and this is what sometimes you have to get familiar with what there's Metatron, there's Sandalphon, there's other archangels that come and spoke to him, and we're teaching him these things. You know, the Zohar talks about the book of was it Raziel, that's been around for a long time. There's a book that the angel Raziel, you know, that the Sefer Yetzirah that Abraham wrote. So there's the mystical portion that a lot of times it's hard to talk about too, because it is not something that is commonly talked about. And, you know, when you're talking about, you know, these things, these spiritual, mysteries that come and visit, you know, the Ramchal, but, you know, they're basically celestial entities, but they're most commonly called angels, you know, and stuff like that. So it's hard to talk about that, but they're there. And I think in the end, you know, it's going to be known, because slowly the veil is being lifted of all this wisdom. But I think we've kind of gone way over our time. But
But he touches on those subjects further on.
yeah, he does, and we're touching on them now. But one chapter I think is devoted to just that, and what we're talking about, the spiritual, and what there's laws, just like there's laws of physics, there's laws of electricity, there's laws in the spiritual that they can't kind of, you always wonder, why these things, happen at 2 o'clock in the morning. You turn on the news in the morning, and all these things happen during the night, and they almost have like a certain window of time if you were to look at it. So the Chaim, the Torah scholars will tell you that it's good to go to sleep early and get up early, Because a lot of times, where are you when you're asleep? You're at home, safe. While all these things are creeping around, you're at home, safe, and you get up early and study Torah, because at that 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, these things are put away, and there's new energy that comes out at the time that you study Torah, and so anyway, but there's a chapter devoted to that, which is really interesting. And if you ever wanted to know like about this stuff, read that chapter.
Which chapter?
It's I'm not sure what chapter it is, but look in the front. It'll tell you it's the spiritual something or other. Man, human responsibility, providence works, Israel and the nations, stars, sin before sin.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Right.
And it's almost to the point where you
Spiritual realm, it's page 75. Physical and spiritual forces and angels, the transcendental forces, determinationism. Right. Yeah. But anyway, we'll cut it short. We'll cut it here. But thank you guys for making it for me going kind of long. But and it's good because sometimes you have this outline but it was good talk. It was I think we learned somewhat. Yeah, good stuff came out. Thank you.